I have wasted over $4,000 on camera equipment that I've hardly ever used. Here, in order of least expensive to most painful, are the biggest purchasing mistakes I ever made as a creator. Yeah, number one is a GoPro or any action cam. Do you really need it? I didn't. This is a normal thing to go through, but I think at this point in my YouTube career, I was collecting gear like they were merit badges. This one only cost me $300, it's just painful. I'm not saying that this hasn't come in handy once or twice. I mean, it's great when you want to bring a camera along, but you don't want to risk like losing your phone in the ocean. That said, unless you're an action sports athlete, really your phone can do 90% of what this can do nowadays. So the use case of a GoPro has become much more limited as cameras on phones have picked up quality because I just have my phone on me all the time in my back pocket. The GoPro is a whole other thing to bring around, and the phone, the image quality still holds up pretty well. It's pretty passable. So before you invest your money in a GoPro or any other action camera, consider whether your phone can do the job. These things should be reserved for snorkeling, rock climbing, or skiing down a massive mountain. Speaking of camera gear merit badges, a drone has become one of those shiny things that you kind of have to have if you're serious about filmmaking or YouTube. The truth is, for me, after I bought the drone, it fell out of use pretty fast. I bought a DJI Spark, which cost around $400 at the time, and I used it on a fairly regular basis when I was making my daily vlogs back in the day. So if you are a vlogger, then maybe a drone actually is a good investment. Again, all of these things that I wasted money on are not necessarily going to be a waste for you, depending upon your use case. Drones are great for vlogging, they're great for travel, but you're definitely better off when it comes to travel getting a smaller drone like the DJI Mini to keep the packing size smaller, because you're going to be carrying everything with you. But you make some concessions with that, mainly wind resistance and the video quality. Higher end drones like the Mavic Pro don't have as many of these issues, and they're great for things like TV productions or films, but they come with the cost of being a lot bigger and heavier and more of a pain to set up. Bottom line is two things. Number one, really consider whether you need a drone. If you're not falling into the category of a vlogger or somebody who's going to use it all the time, just resist the urge to buy the shiny new thing. I understand the fear of missing out with camera gear is huge, but resist. And if you decide that you do need a drone, make sure you're buying the one that suits your needs best and not wasting your money on a $400 shelf ornament like I did. You know, what I've found is that my money has always been best spent on buying things that not only increase the quality of my content, but also my efficiency in creating videos. That goes beyond just camera equipment, because finding great music to soundtrack your videos is massively important, and that is where today's video sponsor Epidemic Sound comes in. Epidemic is a library of over 40,000 songs and 200,000 sound effects, all of which can be used to soundtrack your videos to be published on YouTube or other social media sites worldwide, completely restriction-free. Their music sounds amazing, and their sound effects are world-class. But what really sets Epidemic apart is the user experience. You might not have the budget to license a song from your favorite mainstream artist, but you can search their name or paste a link to their song in Epidemic's search bar, and they'll find you something from Epidemic's library that sounds just like that artist's song. You can also shorten or lengthen any track with their new Create Versions feature. This thing has been a godsend for me as an editor. Trust me, once you try this feature, you'll never want to go back. And honestly, that is just scratching the surface. There's a bunch more features available through Epidemic's plugins for the Adobe suite and for DaVinci Resolve. You can check them out for yourself by going through the link that I have in the description below, which will give you a free trial. Thank you, Epidemic Sound, for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to talking about things that actually aren't worth it, because Epidemic Sound is super worth it. We all love smooth footage, but honestly, I wouldn't buy a gimbal again, at least not as a YouTuber. The truth is, a lot of the B-roll that you're shooting doesn't require a gimbal to get smooth footage. I mean, it's helpful, but when you're shooting in 60 frames per second and you're doing just some very smooth, small movements, you can get away with it by doing handheld shots and by using image stabilization in your camera and post stabilization in your editing software. Those things have gotten really good nowadays. In my experience, gimbals work best when you're shooting weddings or corporate videos or commercials. And basically any time that you have the time to set the whole thing up, get it balanced, and then you want to shoot things in real time but have smooth footage. If your use case fits that, by all means, this can be a great investment, but since nowadays I'm just mostly a full-time YouTuber and making YouTube videos doesn't require a gimbal, my DJI RSC2 just kind of sits around and collects dust most of the time. And it cost me $500, so that's not fun. A much better choice in my case would have just been to rent a gimbal anytime I needed it for a client production, because then I could have just passed that rental cost on to the client, and I never would have needed to purchase a gimbal on its own. This next one might not be the most expensive thing on the list, but honestly, I think it's the most painful. Let me set the stage. So I bought this, the Canon R6, knowing that it had overheating issues. I also heard that using an external recorder like this would solve those overheating issues on this thing. I bought it and it didn't work. Here we are years later, and I've only used this recorder, this monitor, a handful of times. The biggest reason for that is that it's just so dang annoying to set up. It's not really just as simple as plugging this thing into my camera. I mean, I have to make sure that I have these other batteries charged so that it has power to it. I also needed to get a cage to put around my R6 so that I could attach this monitor to the top. Then you get an HDMI cable, you plug it into this camera and into the monitor, and you also, if you're trying to record externally, which is what I was trying to do so that my overheating wouldn't be a problem, you have to get a special kind of SSD to plug into the back of the monitor. So yeah, when it comes to filming YouTube videos, I really have not wanted to do that every time. Also, when it comes down to brass tacks, this whole monitor setup with the monitor, the SSD, the batteries, everything set me back about $700 total, which sucked. Sure, for a few client projects I've broken it out, and it's been nice to have the bigger screen and the special features for those shoots, but this is very much a tool for filmmakers as opposed to YouTubers or content creators, so not worth the money. But speaking of filmmakers, now we come to it. The big kahuna. Ugh, I bought a cinema camera. Why? I don't know, it was stupid. The C200 produces an awesome image in its raw light codec, and at the time I was getting more into client productions and filmmaking, and so I thought I would want to have something that was this powerful and produces this amazing of an image. I also thought it would just be a good investment for me because at the time C200s were going on sale for around $2,000 in the used market. I wasn't wrong about the quality of the image. I mean, that still holds up, it's beautiful. For practical reasons, it was just an awful purchase for me. The biggest reason that this wasn't a good investment is I couldn't use it for two different things. This was made specifically for my client productions, and I couldn't use it for YouTube projects. And this was for two main reasons. Number one, the file codec on this thing, while it looks good, is really, really data heavy. And so when it comes to shooting and editing and storing all that footage, it just didn't make sense because I didn't need raw footage when I was shooting YouTube videos. It was just kind of overkill. The other thing was it kind of takes a whole lot to set up. I mean, this handle needs to go on, this handle needs to go on, you have to put the batteries in, you have to put the monitor on. I don't even have the monitor on right now because it was an annoying thing to get on. All of that to say, this just isn't something good for YouTube, and so it wasn't something good for me. The C200 cost about $2,500 all in, by the way. Most of the things that I buy and never use have actually ended up like that just because they're not very convenient. whether that's a GoPro losing out to my phone, a drone not connecting, a monitor taking way too long to set up, or a gimbal not balancing. It all comes down to efficiency and just the headache of these things not doing what they need to do in an efficient manner. Now, not everything I've ever bought has been bad, so if you're a video editor and you want to know the best tools to use to put together your content, you should watch this video over here where I go over the best ones I've ever invested my money in to help with my video editing, timeline, process, and just efficiency.